Okay, Alichta Chanukah, everybody. I'm sorry for the delay. If anyone actually, tuned in on time some 15 minutes ago, but I was davening Mariv. Sorry, did not go as quickly as I anticipated. Anyway, so here we are, better late than never, and maybe tonight we'll finish the Sefer. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's take a look. The link to follow on inside is in the description of the class. And we're on Daf Chaf Beis in the standard edition. Like I said, there's a link to follow along. And the Maharal is continuing to go through the Gemaras and Shabbos on the end of Hanukkah, in Perak B'Memad Likin. V'amru, and the Gemara says also Shabbos Chafal Beis. My Hanukkah. What's Hanukkah? This is a quote from Megillus Tainus that the Gemara brings. The Tana Rabbanan, the Rabbanan Lord B'Chafir, kids of Yod Hanukkah, Tamnin Inun, on the 25th of Kislev, ushers in the days of Hanukkah, which are 8. The Lo Mitzvah Bahon, you don't do Hespedim on them. The Lo Is Aros, you don't fast on them. And what is it? Kishnichsu Yevarim LeHeichal, when the Yevarim entered the Heichal, where the menorah is, Timu Kol Shmanim Shebeheichal, they defiled all the oils in the Heichal. Kishara Malchus Beis Chashmonai V'Nitzchol, and when the house of the kingdom of Beis Chashmonaim, right, was riled up, got stronger and beat them. Nitzchol Bot Kolotza Pach Echad Shel Shemen Shemura Chosel Shel Kohen Gadol. They checked and they only found one jug of oil that was. It was in a secure place, in this sealed. It was still shut with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. And you only had enough oil to burn for one day. But a nace happened and they lit from it 8 days. And for a year later, they had to regroup. The Sanhedrin had to be reassembled. So in a later year, the Sanhedrin officially sanctioned, made, instituted, the 8 days of Hanukkah as days of giving praise and thanks. Okay. V'im Timer, you might ask, says the Maharal. Right, Maharal said, if the reason why they instituted Hanukkah was because of the Nes Pach Hashemen, right? Miraculously, they will do the mitzvah of lighting the menorah for 8 days, not just for one day. All right, that's not. You don't make a Yom Tov for that. You make a Yom Tov for a day that you got saved, right? Because you got benefit. That miraculously able to be Mekayim a mitzvah does not warrant simcha and thanksgiving. With simcha and thanksgiving is if you were saved. Right. Lafia Dharma Shabana Lamala, Ki Kavas Ivan Levato Tar Vakdusha Yisrael, Kivitz Alanu Yamala Sechas Elkids, Vari Bittel Taru Bittel Yisrael, Vacholam, Haya Bottle, Fikachlasle, Manes, Bada, Mitzvah Sadlaka, She Mitzvah Mitzvah Satar, Bevan Vato Tar, Mitzvah Sem in Yisrael. Those Gamken Heba Base Hamikdash, Asher Kavas Ivan Levato Tar Sechas, Vakdusha Yisrael. Vikar Kedusha base of Mish, Vikar Kavu Hadlaka Snare, Zekla Nation Sem, Mitzvah Hadlaka. Right? So the Maharal's first approach to answer this question is, well, no, you got to look at the context. What was the agenda of their oppressing us? The agenda of their oppression was to take away from us our divinity. The special level of divinity because of Torah, and because we have Torah, we also have, as a function of having Torah, we have mitzvahs that come from the Torah that gives us all this special divine level that they were insanely jealous of. It's a special divine intelligence and a special divine level, and it's all expressed in the Beis HaMikdash, as we've explained previously, says the Maharal. So, so the nace of the Pach Hashem, which happened in the Beis Hamikdash, which happened in the menorah, which represents the light of Torah, right? So that shows that we were truly victorious, that their main plot to take away our divinity was thwarted. Yeah, so over here, the mitzvah, the miracle that we were able to do, the mitzvah of Neros in the Beis Hamikdash, was in itself the expression of the victory, because it was a spiritual struggle. And this shows that our spirituality that they tried to take from us, our divinity, triumphed. Right? That's the Maharal's first approach. And it would seem that this is how you have to learn in Rashi, because Rashi, on the words my Chanukah that we opened up with, says al eza nes kavua. So for sure Rashi, which understands because nes pach Hashem, all right, you have to explain like the Maharal just explained, right? But that's Maharal's first approach. He has another approach. No, really, Hanukkah is over the geopolitical victory that we liberated the land of Israel. We liberated ourselves from their rule, right? Plain old liberation, right? Which, like we said, you're only supposed to, you only have to give thanksgiving if you got a benefit, right? And the benefit that we got on a personal level, because mitzvahs lav lehenos nitnu, right? The personal level, we indeed got freed from their, political oppression. They no longer were our overlords, right? So that could be the basis for, the holiday of having simcha and saying hallow, right? Rak shelo nira shekanitzachon azay they nes shenase zeh Hashem yisborach v'lo haya zeh mikol grosel fikach nase nes they nera shemach sheidu akol haya nes min Hashem yisborach v'kacha mulchama shim mitzvah haya min Hashem yisborach. Right. So now is that so? But what? So what do we have? The nace of the Pach Hashem to show that don't think that there wasn't divine intervention over here. Like we might think, well, we had a very good army, we just, Judah Maccabee, great general, great strategy. Guerrilla warfare always, it always takes down these organized armies. Yada, 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 all that stuff. So the miracle with the Neros remind us, this was from God. Thanks is, to be given to God. He's the one who made this all possible. As we say now, Lisa Masarta, you handed over Giborim B'Yad Chashem, Ram Yadim, Jem Yadim, Shem B'Yad Tzadikim, Zem Yazkei Sar Sicha. It's all from God. So we needed the nace, to show that it happens from God. So there's like a very big halachic difference between these two approaches. Approach number two indeed assumes that you cannot make a Yom Tov just because a big miracle happened. Like if I got chance upon some type of huge miracle that only I witnessed, me and a few friends, we can't make a holiday and they we just saw something. You make a Yom Tov if you have had, you were saved. Like I have a son who was run over as an infant, like literally a year and a half old, and miraculously survived without a single wound. It's a story I tell over every year, particularly on Purim, but it happened during the Omer period, on Isru Chag of Pesach. Anyways, it's okay. He got saved, so we do a Yom Tov, we do a Suda every year. And that's the way. It's also the special halacha. There was the famous Purim de Frankfurt. The whole city got saved. They instituted their own Purim for the day that they were saved. And then the Meiri says in Megillah also, I believe it's in Megillah or it's in Sanhedrin. Not Sanhedrin. I meant Psachim. Right? The Miriam Psachim. If a person has a miracle that happens to him, he got saved. He should do something every year on that anniversary. All right. So. So Hanukkah is no exception. The basis of making a Yom Tov of Thanksgiving is for being saved. Right? Mitzvahs are not given for our pleasure, and just seeing an awesome event is not the basis of celebrating holiday. You have to celebrate. You have to be kovea, a day of to celebrate and give thanks when you had a benefit of being saved, some sort like that. But the first way of the Maharal saying is that Hanukkah was an interesting exception. It was an interesting exception because since the struggle was an issue of the spirit, right? They wanted to take away our high level of, that was the oppression. The oppression was a central oppression. For that, even on the next, which didn't give us any physical benefit. Mitzvah Slav didn't know. We still make a chag around it because it shows that the plot of the Yevonim to strip us of our high spiritual level was not successful, which would make Hanukkah an outlier, according to the first approach in the Maharal. Interesting stuff to discuss with your local Orthodox rabbi. Okay. According to the Right, so now it is not a coincidence. We said even according to the second approach. Second approach is there should be a simon that the geopolitical victory, was from God, and we shouldn't attribute it to our, being great, having great strategy, or that's just how guerrilla warfare always beats the organized army or any stuff like that. Because it was Dafka, this miracle that would shed light. That the victory that we had over the Greeks was from Hashem, because the Greeks were just notorious for having defiled the Beis HaMikdash. And we find else places, they talk about, the Avnei Mizbeach that they chipped away at the Mizbeach. Some of the stones of the Mizbeach were ruined by the Greeks who occupied Chei. Right, and so also in a few places. Hashem is right, also Hashem saw their evilness, that the hallmark of their evilness was to defile the Heichal of the Beis HaMikdash, and in addition to that, in parallel, like we've explained already, they wanted to annul Torah and mitzvahs from us. Right, and therefore Hashem, just again to show that this is all from Him, and it's all payback for how it's payback for how the Yevonim took on the Beis HaMikdash and took on Torah and mitzvahs. Because who was the mainstay of the arm, the leaders, the leaders of the army were the Chashon. Who were the Chashon? They were Kohanim, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dafka gave the koach to the Kohanim, right, who are the holy people that work in the Beis HaMikdash, right, which are, they stand as an anti to what Yavon is. You want to ask what Yavon was most jealous of? Say the Kohen, because the Kohen is Kedusha manifest in body, and they thought that with their Greek culture, they reached the pinnacle of human perfection. It comes a Kohen who has this divine level that they don't have. Jewish people have it in general, but the Kohanim have it in particular. So there's nothing that probably triggers a Greek guy more than a Kohen. So Dafka the Kohanim led the revolt. The Chashmonaim were the Kohanim. Right? So the Kohanim, which served God in the Beis HaMikdash that they defiled, Velu Nitzchum Dafka, this was these who Dafka beat them. Lo Acherem, and not the other segments of Jewry, meaning the Kohanim were very noticeable, in being the organizers of the revolt and leading the revolt. So it's credited to them. And when they beat them, they purified the Beis. And when they didn't have oil, they had a miracle that they were able to purify the house and to re-inaugurate it. That's why it's called Chanukah, the re-inauguration, because they defiled, right? And because defiling takes off the kedusha, because it makes it psuli hamukdashin, right? It makes it possible for being kodesh, right? And it was all about making the house pure again, reinstating purity. And what's written between the lines over here in this Maharal is undoubtedly the inspiration of the Chidushei Arim that everyone says over. Why do they have to purify? Need pure oil. Tumo Trovat Tzibur. Chidushei Arim says no. Chinuch has to be al Taskarish. The start, the inauguration has to be betahara, and that's especially true that the whole thing of the Yavanim was to be metame, right? To impose their tumah on the kodesh. So it all has to be betara to push out the influence of Yavan. Right? That's why it's called Chanukah, because they reinaugurate the Beis Hamikdash betara after it was defiled. It was made tummy from the people of Yavan. Right, therefore, this miracle was done in oil. Right, because this is right the best way to be an expression of the victory the Jews had over the Greeks. Right, it was we defeated the fact that they defiled the heichal of the Beis Hamikdash. And Hashem says their defiling will do no good. I still want the Jewish people back in the heichal with all their purity. Right? And therefore the miracle was done with candles. Allah heichol b'zemitaz heichol ki b'tzar heichol b'vad govelav koach yavan. L'kach k'shegavru ala heichol timus koach shmanim shebaheichol shedakshon kashem yuchad l'kedusha l'shem kashu moshchim hakol v'kra kedusha v'af bazeh shotu yon timus koach shmanim. Right. So now the Greeks want to defile. They're against kedusha. Tumah, is anti-kedusha. All right. So they wanted to take over the heichal and be mevatel the kedusha of the heichal. So they're metamed the heichal, and they're metamed the shemen per se. Shemen, just like even the Medrash says, it rises to the top. Kedusha is a high level, just like shemen rises to the top, and that's the inyan, as the Maharal just said, right? That when initially the kalim in the days of the Mishkan, who had to be anointed with oil to get their kedusha, and that's why we also anoint kings with the shemen. It's like to give a higher status. So they were jealous of our higher status, which is what oil represents, right? So that's why they defiled the oil, right? They defiled the oil as a further expression of their defiling the heichal, because what they were hated about the heichal was the kedusha and the heichal, the high level of the heichal that is inaccessible to them. So they, as a function of defiling the heichal to show that this is what they're about, they defile the oil, which represents the high level, just like oil, floats to the top. And that's why with the shemen hamishcha, the anointment oil, so to give a person a higher status or give the kalim of the mishkan their higher status, they were anointed with oil, raised them up. So they defiled the oil. They're jealous of our high divine level. Right? So now Yavan was able to do this temporarily because, as Maharal points out, an amazing remez. Heichal is gematria 65. Right? So so Heichal and all that it represents, 65. Yavan gematria 66. It's more by one, so it's more than Heichal. They're able to overcome the Heichal. Aha, right. But Maharal is going to say now, this was only temporary until we tapped into yet a higher place. But let's let the Maharal talk, as the Maharal goes on to explain. It only remained one little jug that was resting, sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Because the Kohen Gadol is even higher than the kedusha of the heichal and the kedusha of the regular Kohen, right? Right? Because the Kohen Gadol goes into the holiest of holies, which is beyond the Heichal. It goes to the Kodesh Kodesh Yom Kippur. So Munach B'chosam Kohen Gadol says that that's why they couldn't get to this jug of oil. It was like invisible to them. Because this jug of oil was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. They could overturn the Heichal. So regular oil, which would say we would be on regular holy oil, which would say we'd be on par with the concept of the Kedusha of the Heichal, the Yevonim can overtake it. But only temporarily, because there's yet a higher Kedusha that plays out, and that's the Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and that's all. You always find, why did they stop there? It's amazing. It's as if the Kodesh HaKadoshim was invisible to them. It's like, they could, as it were, compete with the Heichal, even though in the depth of it is no competition, like we're going to explain, right? But they can't even see the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's like off the frequency, it's off the spectrum of what they could even see. The Heichal, they could see, but they can't really have. They thought they had it, and only on a temporary basis, because we're going to learn there's a hidden kedusha to the Heichal that they didn't really have. They just took the external level of the Heichal, right? But the Kodesh HaKadoshim is totally off the spectrum of what they can even see. And this jug of oil was Munach B'chosem Kohen Gadol, who's the only one licensed to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So this oil had the effect of that higher kedusha. So they were oblivious to this jug of oil. It's like they were oblivious to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So this jug of oil, sealed by the seal of the Kohen Gadol, who's the one who goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it just was beyond their reach. However you're going to explain that. Right. Umitzad zeh yivarim koachal hechel b'shul mal azos shi Kodesh HaKadoshim lechol mishol yavan ba'oso pach konsha b'chosam b'hester shel Kohen Gadol ki ba'osa hey shel hechel yesh bo tzeri yesh yud nacha v'yud ne'lemes shenishma b'kriyas hatzeri v'mor mal yona nister sheyesh b'hechel v'mas Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, let's just go into the depth of what's being said over here. Now, this jug that was with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, it was in the Heichal. It was in the Heichal. It wasn't in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So there's like a power of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that's hidden within the Heichal. And this oil, jug of oil, which was in the Heichal, the Chashmonaim found it in the Heichal, right? But it's like it was tapping into the power of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which means if the Heichal could tap into the power of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that means even when we say, Heichal 65, Yavan 66, so they could overtake the Heichal, that's only on the external level of the Heichal. But the Heichal, in the depth of it, has power that emanates, that reverberates within it, that is emanated to it from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the Maharal says that's alluded to in the word Heichal. Heichal spelled Hey Yud Chaf Lamed, right? Gematria 65, right? But you don't really need that Yud, or rather, with that Yud, you don't really need the Tserei. Under the Hey of Heichal is a Tserei, which in itself makes the Hey sound. So, that means there's a hidden Yud, a hidden phonetic Yud, right, aside from the Yud that you see when you write out the word Heichal. So you write out the word Heichal, without the Nekudas. You never write the Nekudas, by the way. So you write out the word Heichal 65, but there's also the phonetic Yud, Heichal, of the Tserei, the two dots like this under the Hey, and the letter of Yud. The Maharal writes in a lot of places, a well-known idea, represents Kedusha, like Yud is a minion, 10 is a minion, and that's where you could say Inyonim Sheb Kedusha, like Kedusha per se, and say Baruch Hu Es Hashem Avarach, it's, Kaddish, all Inyoni Kedusha is with 10, you need a minion, and the letter Yud is what the higher worlds were created with. So you have the revealed Yud of the word Heichal, which is Gematria. We're only looking at what's revealed and spelled out. When you write the word Heichal in a scroll, All right, 65. All right, that's the external, it's the visible. So the Yevonim are 66. But then there's the hidden Yud, which is only pronounced phonetically, Heichal, the Tzere, under the Hey. That refers to the hidden Kedusha that hides within the Heichal, and it's emanated from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So it comes out that even when we say they overtook the Heichal, only took over the external level of the Heichal. The pneumius of the Heichal, which is Yoinek, it draws strength from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, they never got to it. So this jug of oil was in the Heichal, which the Yevonim supposedly overtook and conquered, and they just couldn't see it, even though it was in the Heichal, because it was Murach B'chol Samashal Kohen Gadol, so it tapped into the aspect of the Heichal that absorbs power from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Right? Right? So now so they could not tap, they just could not see, this jug of oil, which was a function of the aspect of the Heichal that gets hidden Kedusha from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? The premise of the Heichal that gets from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? And so Kodesh HaKadoshim is like totally off their spectrum of things that they could even see, let alone have. And the Heichal secretly gets that Kedusha there. And this jug of oil that was in the Heichal was tapped into that hidden Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that spreads within the Heichal. And that's why this jug of Shen had the seal of the Kohen Gadol, who's the one who goes into Kodesh HaKadoshim. So even though this jug of oil was in the Heichal, it was tapped in to the aspect, it was part of the aspect of Heichal that secretly gets Koach from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Right. Our Kohen showed off our Kodesh HaKadoshim, showed Kohen Gadol, Chassid Kodesh HaKadoshim, will kach Kohen who b'mispar Heichal ima yuleves shehi keneged. So we got to flip the page. She keneged Kodesh HaKadoshim, but who kicked their butts? Pardon my French, right? The Kohanim. Now the word Kohen is 75. So 75 is Gematria Heichal, 65, plus the hidden Yud, another 10, 75. That means the Kohanim, the Kohen Gadol in particular, but even Kohanim in general, as in the Chashmonaim, they tapped into the hidden power of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that spreads within the Heichal. The Kohanim are able to awaken in the Heichal, the hidden Kedusha that comes from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. They're tapped into that hidden Kedusha because Kohen, Gematria 75, an extra 10, representing the hidden Yud of Heichal, the hidden Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It spreads in Heichal. So the Kohanim, tapped into that hidden Koach, and that's what that, by awakening the hidden Koach of the Heichal, which is the Koach of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that spreads Heichal, that's what caused them to be able to eject the Yevonim. Right, and that was the secret of this jug of oil. It was already tapped into the hidden Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that spreads in the Heichal. Lefikach, so as the Maharal, sums it up. Lefikach and the Sharpach cotton munach b'chos hamoshel Kohen Gadol shel sholtu shama Yevonim. Therefore, there was this small jug with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, that the Yevonim just could not. It was like invisible to them. They didn't have any control. But Kechel calls to show Kanira, Shem Tzum Rakayut, She Nach Nelam, Shubester, Vayuda Mora al Madek Dusha, Kiasiu Korsh Bachol Makom. Yuda Nachal Batseri, Shitea, Shtacharei, Mora Kedusha, Nelemis, Nisteris, Madregas Kodesh HaKadoshim, Shehu Nister, Vizel Lo Matsua Yevonim. Avakoim b'mispar ayin hey v'unichas b'nister u'b'niglish heichal fikach pakon she'munach b'atzer shel Kohen Gadol l'kod b'nasnei tzayik bo ches yomim. All right, so the Maharal again sums up that under the hay of heichal is that hidden yud, which by the way also gets back to something that we said at the beginning of the book, that even in Olam Hazeh, the hay that Olam Hazeh was created with is a dalet and a yud. That even in Olam Hazeh it's like a little bit of hidden kedusha of Olam Haba. We discussed this at the very beginning of this book, but he expects you to remember that. So when he drops in that undafka under the hay of heichals, that sere, that phonetic yud, which is hidden yud, that's not written out but only pronounced. The Kohen, which is gematria 75, taps into it, right? And as it were, in the words of the Maharal, when the Kohen goes into the heichal, he's not just when a Kohen is serving God in the heichal, he's not just in the external floor and four walls of the heichal. He also is operating in the inner dimensions that suck energy from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Kohen is able to awaken the hidden kedusha of the heichal, which is bigger than Yavan, and it ejects them. And by no coincidence, Kohen gematria yud, 10 more than heichal. He taps into the hidden kedusha of heichal, and of course, kedusha is always in tens, as we've explained. Okay. So now we go back to breaking down the the details of the miracle. There was only enough oil to light for one day. But there was a miracle, and they lit with it 8 days. Right? Biur davar bom mimalas korosh korosh sheshom lo shlo yivarim b'malaso sheyesh lo vuatzneah shel kohen gadol. L'kach yilu al chesyon ki korosh korosh hu achar shiva v'zeu hashmini. The very fact that it lit 8 days shows that indeed is another telltale sign that this jug of oil was tapped into the hidden kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because the eating of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, its special level is the eighth. The regular kedusha is the 7th, and the kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim is 8. And so the fact that it burned for 8 days shows it was tapped into the kedusha of this jug of oil, was tapped in to the hidden kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that spreads within the heichal. It's tapped into this kedusha that comes from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the idea of 8. Now that's what we're going to explain. Right? So why do I say this? That the Kodesh HaKadoshim is 8. 8 represents the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why I say Kodesh HaKadoshim is after 7. Because this natural world goes in 7 days of the week, because it was indeed created in 7 days. And we learned this either yesterday. I think yesterday we invoked this. So anything that's supernatural, that's above nature, is 8. 8 is after the 7 days of nature. Same thing, that's why bris milah is on the 8th day, because naturally you have a foreskin. Every male is born with a foreskin. And sometimes there are mutants that have very little foreskin, but it's natural to have a foreskin. I'm reminded of how my Rosh Yeshiva, my Rav Yaakov Warmick, Zichrono Livracha, did not go to high school during the day. He got himself a high school diploma at night. That was I think when he was in Torah Vidas, or one place he went to night school. So in night school, to get his high school diploma, he said that he actually said he was actually in night school together with Norman Lamb. Isn't that interesting? Anyways, he had mentioned that. Anyway, night school, they taught him about one of the earlier theories of evolution was that an acquired trait becomes encoded in the DNA, and that was refuted because by some guy whose name begins with an L. I can't remember the name exactly, it's on the tip of my tongue. He took mice, cut off their tails, and they had those 2 mice whose tails he cut off. He bred them, and their descendants had tails, cut off their tails, and then crossbred them, the 2 tailless ones, and they also had mice with tails. And that's it. That's how that, the idea of an acquired trait getting encoded into the genetics was refuted. He said when he heard that, it sounded so moronic to him. They had to do this experiment with rats to disprove that idea that an acquired trait becomes naturalized. How stupid could they be? They didn't know that the Jewish people for thousands of years are doing bris milah, and the Jewish babies didn't stop being born with foreskins, right? Foreskins are natural. And that's why there's a halacha that the foreskin has to have its 7 days. If you do milah shvi, lav shmei milah, if you do a bris milah during the 7 days, it's not good. You have to do it again on the 8th day. The foreskin is natural, and there's interesting halacha. It has to have its time. It has to have its 7 days, because it's natural. It has to have its 7 days, which is the natural order where it belongs, right? You take away you go against the nature of having a foreskin when only on the 8th day, because that's where you go to above nature, right? But the foreskin gets its 7 days of nature. It's natural, it gets its 7 days. So if you do a bris too early, it's not good. You have to be meitiv tam bris, right? So bris milah is when we're changing nature. It's on the 8th day. That's the time to do it because nature gets 7 days, right? If So anything that's holy is above nature. So therefore, your Karshka is called the holiest of holies. It's like Kedusha squared, right? This is supernatural, period. If you want, talk about the Heichal, is Kedusha embedded in Teva, but Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's purely God's space. So it's definitely belongs to the realm of 8 plus. But also, this thing also to Chazal in the Midrash. Rashi brings it in Parshas Achrayos. With this, Aaron comes to the holiest of holies on Yom Kippur. What's bezos with this? B'schus ha-milah, in the merit of milah, of bris milah, shneim bar zos bris. This zos, also zos. This is my covenant that you will keep. Nichras Aaron Kosh. Ubirze ki lo yaroi ben adam chomri likarso makam shu kardish kadashim nagashe chomri im lo sheish bar milah shu ala teva gam kain b'schus haya nichras Kosh Kosh shu kodesh nivdo min ateva. Right. So now, and it makes perfect sense. No physical human being should be allowed to enter this realm, which is clearly beyond nature, right? So in what merit does a physical man go in there? B'schus the milah. The bris milah is that the Kohen Gadol has, and not just him, not only his own personal bris milah, but because the Jewish people that he represents have bris milah, they have this supernatural level, bris milah, supernatural above nature. That's the license for us to, only on Yom Kippur, to go into this realm, which is supernatural. Look, and that's why, by no coincidence, in the first temple period, and the way it'll be in the future in the third base of Mikdash, right? The Kodesh Kodashim contains the Ark of Covenant, which has in the Luchos and has a Sefer Torah. Shisichlis Bilti Gashmi, because the Torah is supernatural; it's from heaven. It's not earthly knowledge like the sciences, which is what the Greeks had, like we explained. They just had earthly knowledge. The Torah is divine knowledge that was given from heaven. So the Torah is heavenly, so it belongs in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which has a word, embassy of heaven on earth, but it itself is totally heavenly, like an embassy. Embassy has the laws of having, as being the soil of the company that's represented by that embassy. Same thing, Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's heaven. It's the embassy of heaven, so it's heaven, right? So the Torah is there. But Torah nitno gam kain achar hazayin shreksiv sheshva tzuzurach achrizan tzuz b'yom hachoshin nitno Torah. So now he's recapping what we said before. And Torah itself also is the 8th because it was given after 7 weeks of the Omer. So after you finished the 7 weeks, Machras Shabbos Hashvius, right after the 7th, the end of the 7th day of the the 7th week, which already goes into the 8th week. That's when Torah was given. V'chein mizmar ashrei tina derech usar torach b'tamiyabin. Also Tilim Kufya test we learned yesterday. He's recapping what we said yesterday. Which that whole kapitel talks about Torah. That's why it's 8 olives, 8 bays, 8 gibel. Kozral Malas we explained before. Bechatzvaya menorah v'bashevinos ha'b'krosh koshen ha'Torah v'aron shua or atzma kach nikra aron milashon or shatorah or ishmines. So now, even though in the Heichal we had the menorah had 7 branches. Yeah, but look what Maharal says. Amazing. Yeah, the menorah, the physical menorah, has 7 branches, but the fire is the 8th. The fire is the 8th. And the fire represents the light of Torah. And the light of Torah is what's emanated, as it were, from the Kodesh HaKadoshim to the Heichal. And it's represented, in the Heichal you have the 7 branches of the menorah, right? The 8th that's superimposed on the 7 is the fire that's put on the menorah, the lighting of the candle, the light of the candles. And that is, as it were, sent, it's in that light is hidden the kedusha that comes from the oron, from the ark. As he says, oron and or, same root. And he brings a medrash to that effect. The light of Torah is why the ark, aron, say, which contains the word or also. I would say with the extra nun is because Torah is given on the 50th day, right? As we just said. So the Oron is the source of the light, is the spiritual source of the light that is, so even though they lit the candles with the fire of the Mizbeach, but nonetheless, the spirituality of that light was emanated from the Oron and Kodesh Kodashim. It is the 8th, the light on top of the 7 branches of the menorah. That is the 8th, and that is, its spiritual dimensions come from the Oron and the Kodesh HaKodashim. And that's why the candles burn for 8 days. The hidden power of the Kodesh HaKodashim has been revealed. So now again, we're going back to the fact that this jug of oil, that it was tapped into hidden kedusha of the Kodesh HaKodashim, was stamped with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. That's how they knew it wasn't defiled by the Greeks. That seal was unbroken. The Kohen Gadol, who's the one who goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim, by no coincidence wears 8 begadim, 8 big day kahuna. Your average Kohen your regular Kohen only wears 4. He wears 8. All right. So again, all going back to this point, the Kohen Gadol is the Kohen in particular that's tapped in, that goes in there, and that's why, because of his special level. By the way, he doesn't go in with those 8 begadim to the Kodesh HaKodashim. He has to wear special big day lavan, special white garments, right, of Yom Kippur. But nonetheless, the type of guy who wears 8 begadim is the type of guy who can, on Yom Kippur, with the appropriate begadim, go into the Kodesh HaKodashim. Right? The so again, so as the Yevonim defiled the Heichal, but only the externality of the Heichal, and then when the Heichal made a comeback and they were able to purify it because they tapped into this kedusha from the 8th level, and that's why the miracle, was an expression of that. To express that's where the kedusha is coming from. That's why by no coincidence, the candles miraculously burn 8 days. Roya says b'chafei kislev shaza or yetze ki b'chafei bel nivra or ba'olam kol nivra b'chafei b'tishrei u'bo nivra adam shnivra b'shishi shall yemei braces vosh nivra b'yom rishon yazeh b'chafei elo nivra or v'yesh or dalet gvulim hagvul echad shorhu b'tachlis ha'is gaber shalo. Okay, so he says, let's just, before we get to the next point. He says now he's going on the date. Not a coincidence that the This was on the 25th of Kislev. The 25th of Kislev. First of all, 25, the 25th of the month is when the light was created, and the 25th of Elul. According to the Shita, that the world was created in Tishrei. So when we say, Tishrei, the world's created, we mean the Ikra of the world was created, which means man. The creation of man was on Tishrei. Aleph Tishrei, what we call Rosh Hashanah, was day 6 of creation. So work backwards to 6 days earlier to when Hashem said, Yehi or let there be light. So Yehi or let there be light was on Chaf Hey Elul, the 25th of Elul. So you see that the number 25, the 25th of the month rather, is the day of light. As in 25th of Elul, the light originally emerged. So it's not a coincidence, it's the 25th of Kislev, right? But now the Maharal is gonna, tighten this connection. And he says like this, right? Now the light has 4 boundaries. There's when the light, we're talking about the daylight, where the daylight is at its greatest, and the darkness is day is longest, night is shortest. But then comes the time when the light begins to get less and less, and the darkness more and more, and that's in Tammuz. Tammuz is when the days are the longest, and from the days being lost, it can only go down to the daylight hours starting to get shorter. Then comes the then there's a time when it's exactly 12 hours each, and that's roughly Tishrei. Tishrei is the time when it's equal. That's when Tishrei comes out in September, or rather, I should say, end of September, very beginning of October. So that's the equinox. That's on September 21st, right? Which often September 21st, many times it comes out roughly Chaf Hey Elul, right? When the world light was originally created, and that's when it's in a perfect balance of 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours light, 12 hours dark. But from there, it only gets worse that the light gets less and the darkness gets more. Right? But then there's the opposite extreme where the nights are longest and the daylight is shortest, and that's in the month of Teves, roughly January-ish, right? It's just when it reaches, the nights get the longest and the daylight hours get the shortest. We call it Matchol Gaber. But from that point onwards, it's, the pendulum starts shifting, the light starts expanding, and the darkness begins to get less. And then we reach when the light catches up to, the light has expanded so much and the darkness has contracted so much that they are equal again, 12 hours each. And that's in Chodesh Nisan. Again, in the spring, it's again an equinox of 12 hours each. Right? But then the light continues to expand as spring moves to summer, and the darkness gets less and less, and it's until the month of Tammuz, and then the cycle starts again, everything that we described. The very beginning where the pendulum begins to swing. The nights got longer, days shorter. The pendulum begins to swing at the 25th of Kislev. When light initially emerged on the 25th of Elul, and it initially emerged in an equinox of 12 hours each, 12 hours light, 12 hours of darkness. The Chaf Hey, switching the page. Chafei Ba'adar, or its equivalent would be in the 25th of Adar. So even though we say generally speak, Nisan is the equinox. The equinox. Um, it starts moving towards it's the 25th of Adar. So 25th of Adar is when the light was created according to Rabbi Yeshua, who says the world's created in Nisan, and the 25th of Elul, according to Rabbi Lezer, who says the world was created in Tishrei. Right, so it means the equinox is not strictly Rosh Chodesh, Tishrei, or Rosh Chodesh. Nisan, it's Chafhei Elul or Chafhei Adar, when the light initially emerged. Right. In Keras Chos Oru b'Chafei b'Kislev Shos Batchol is Gaber. So since the 25th of the month is where the critical juncture. So we say that the critical juncture, we say Teves, is when the pendulum begins to swing back. That we go from the longest nights and the shortest days. It's process begins to reverse itself. It's not strictly Rosh Chodesh Teves. It's Chafhei Kislev, 5 days earlier. So, other than the 24th Kislev is the day where the pendulum begins to swing, that the days will start recovering and being longer, and the nights will begin to become shorter. So, also zman umiyuchad latzchos or batzchos or royal beis midrash kmo she'amar mendesh Rebecca Shem Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Makam beis midrash nifrei sa'ora rachsividei kvodo okay so ba midera kadim vein kvodo al beis hamikdash. Excuse me. They go to the beis hamikdash. Ksiv kisegam ram rishon makom mikdashenu adkan. Right, so now it comes out like this, unbelievable. So the 25th of Kislev is the time when the pendulum begins to swing back in favor of light. Light begins to get longer, night gets darkness begins to get shorter, and this also happened. This pendulum swing, of light, which also represents Kedusha. So that's why this miraculous light was 8 days. And it's paralleling that in the cosmos, the power of light is making a comeback after the Yevanim, which we learned earlier, are called Choshech. They're called darkness, right? The Maharal expects you to remember that. They're called darkness. Choshech zu Yavan. We learned that at the very beginning of the book. Darkness is Yavan, right? Darkness is called Yavan. All right, so now the pendulum begins to switch on the 25th of Kislev, so the miracle of the divine light and parallel that cosmically light is overcoming darkness. Yavan is darkness, light is overcoming darkness, and this miracle happens in the Beis Midrash because the Beis Midrash also represents light, as the Maharal brings a medrash that proves that when light originally shot out, when God said Yehi Or, what was the first place it emerged from? Light shot out. Shoot up from the base and make כמו ארץ שיש לארץ גסות ועבוד החומרי, יוסף ככה מים זק ורוח עוד יותר מסוק מן הגשמי, כך תרוח יותר זך ויותר דק, ויש של מעלה שהוא יסודי שהוא עוד יותר מסוק מן הגשמי, לפי כך הוא יוסר זך ויוסר דק, עד שכל נראים מתוכה, כאילו אין כאן דבר חוצץ כלל. Right, because that's the way it works. The more earthy and lowly something is, the darker it is. So the minerals, that are 100% element of earth, very dark. They don't shine and they're opaque. The water, a little bit less earthy. So it's possible to see in the water. Not so clear, but you could see. Right, the air less or even less earthy. It's even more. You can see very freely in the air, right? And then it goes to fire. And fire not only can you see, but it glows. But it's not glowing that's at the expense of seeing, because we're talking about elemental fire. Elemental fire is totally invisible, and that's why the elemental fire doesn't block us from seeing the stars, even the smallest stars. So the fire, which is even above air, is the elemental fire that we're talking about, not our fire. That's a composite of all the four elements that the medieval thinkers spoke about, that are also in the Sefer Yetzirah, by the way. We're not talking about fire as we know. We're talking about the elemental fire that's even higher. It's totally translucent, totally see-through, right? Right. So therefore, the holier, the more lofty something is, the shinier, the less opaque it is, right? So called, less opaque, more translucent, more shiny, and that's where he wants to make the point. Meaning the Makom of the Mikdash is separate from the physical, as we explained. Is the idea of Beis Mikdash? It's Mikdash, it's holy, so it's separate from the rest of Yerushalayim, right? Let alone the rest of the world. And that explains, Hurdas, went on a killing spree and killed out all the Chacham of his generation. Baba Ben Buta, got him to do tshuva. He asked Baba Ben Buta, how did I get kapara? What could I do as a countermeasure having killed the Rabbanim? He said the Rabbanim carried a Torah which is called light. You cover Orsham, that's what Orsham, right? You extinguish the light of the world, the light of Torah. Well, renovate something that's also represents that light, and that's the Beis HaMikdash. So you cover Orsham, Le'asap Orsham, you extinguish the light of the world, be engaged in the light of the world, and then Hortus indeed renovated the Beis HaMikdash and was supposedly the most beautiful building in history after he renovated with a passion to make up for having killed all the rabbis, or many rabbis. All right, so you see again this idea that the Beis HaMikdash is a manifestation of light. Therefore, we say that light, which is not physical, it's above the physical, was created by no coincidence from the place of the Beis HaMikdash when it originally emerged. But during the masculine volume, the Beis HaMikdash, Beneros B'Yom Chaf, to understand it all the pieces of the puzzle are lining up in a perfect parallel, right? That the miracle was in the Beis HaMikdash, in candles, light, a miracle of light, in the Beis HaMikdash, which is light, on the day of Chafei Kislev, which is when light begins to resurge, right? After having been totally, put down by the darkness. The 25th Kislev is a special time for the or to, rile, and make a comeback. Mishkan Nikmor Chafei because lo come ad echad ben Nisan zeh kamo shemarnu kazor hu chodesh haor shu chodesh haor hu shach Chafei Kislev. Which also hu haor kamo shemarnu. Kach Nigmar Mishkan shu at chosor b'Chafei b'Kislev. Right. Avlo kam bar tzar acharnisa get tachlin ruim makabel arazeh shu beis hamikdash rak kasha olam b'shleimus u'b'chodesh Nisan shazom b'shleimus v'azo hu kama mishkan ba'aretz d'rashom achrona olam. Avaschal samishkan kasha nigmar b'nai as a makafa gizav kamosh v'amar shaz yotzar olam beis hamikdash hu or. And therefore, with this he brings up sikta, and with this we have finished the book. The philosophical side of the book. Mazel tov, Shavuot Chaim. All right, but anyway, didn't finish the book. Let's explain the paragraph, right? He brings up sikta that the Mishkan that was originally constructed in the desert, they actually finished all the components in the 25th of Kislev. Unbelievable. And God already promised then to make it up to the 25th of Kislev. There'll be a new inauguration. They should have had the inauguration then because all the pieces were ready. Just had to assemble, but all the components were already in place. So Hashem says, now pay it back, with Hanukkah. But it was, so it's amazing. So apropos, because the 25th of Kislev is when the light gets stronger, right? So that's the date for a Mishkan to emerge, right? But it has to emerge in a world that deserves it. And that's why God says, he pushed off the actual erection of the Mishkan, put the pieces together till Nisan, because the world has to be worthy, and the world reaches its optimal state in Nisan when Chodesh Aviv, when everything is in full bloom, and liberated, just like it's a month of liberation from Egypt, as the Radziner says. You have to look at full bloom as a form of liberation, of being liberated from being stuck in potential and plus with the actual. The world is in its best, most deserving state, most optimal state in Nisan. That's why for the world to be deserving of a Mishkan, you have to wait till Nisan. But the Mishkan itself was ready to emerge on Chafei Kislev, and that was indeed paid back to, the payback for it was in the, by the story of Hanukkah. Right. Or, but of course, from the Mishkan's perspective, which the Mishkan is the light, it was ready to emerge already on Chafei Kislev, which is the time when the light resurges, right? So, but the reason why God in that generation delayed it until Nisan was that the world had to be deserving. Okay, let's have a l'chaim together. Don't answer amen to my shahakol, because you're probably catching a recording. Do not answer amen to the bracha you're about to hear. To make you l'chaim and are finishing the book. The next piece, the story which he does, he gives its own preamble. Yehuda ben says Judah, the son of Betzalel, because it is a separate essay, just trying to prove both in halacha and with philosophy that all the wax candles that just about the whole Jewish people use are not good. You should use, according to the Maharal, any liquid-based candle or the would be okay. You need a kli. You need a kli, fuel, and wick. Right now, maybe we'll do it together. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. But now we're free. The main book on the idea of Hanukkah per se has been finished. Right. Kol hakavod. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim. All right. Just like we finished Ner Mitzvah, my dear friends, we will finish yet many books and many Torah sugyas together. Amen. Amen. All right. Alech Hanukkah, everybody.